We also have most of the people learned about this meetup on the forum or on LinkedIn, and a couple of other actually that I'm quite interested in what the other is. And we have a mix of architecture, engineering, a couple of software developers, which I imagine is from our team, more engineers than architects this time around.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
welcome
Welcome,
everyone.
everyone. So let's get us started. Every time we have new people joining, so I have to do the what is pollination speech again. Hopefully, you know, at some point soon we don't have to do that because everyone knows what's pollination. We'll do pollination updates for 10 minutes, and after that, Trevor will do a presentation of his work using pollination ecosystem. I'm personally very excited to see that. And we'll see how that goes. And then after that, we will have a QA session, like basically bring any and every question that you have. And almost everyone from our team is here to answer them. With that, so what's pollination? Pollination is an ecosystem of tools that we build for environmental building design and simulation. Why is it important? Because it will help you to get from question to actionable data quickly. And just to be clear, if you have a question and you want to get to actionable data, people like this. This is not how it works. This is how it works. So you have initial question, then you get to initial data, then you can have an informed question after that, which helps you to get to actionable data. So this is how we are designing the process. This is our famous slide. If you haven't seen it already, this basically talks about that process of like how we collaborate together and how pollination is going to improve that. Basically, right now, the collaboration is a stage, like goes from one person to another person. We have delay. And because of how we collaborate, we are in the process of 1 or 2 weeks of turnaround from the time that you have a question and you get some data which may or may not be actionable. And that's the time that we lose that will cause all the issues that we have, or most of the issues that we have with collaboration. So how do you resolve that with pollination is by having pollination as the place as the hub that you use for collaboration. And we have built the whole tool set to help you do that. So the way it works now is from the developer side, consultant, they develop a unit of logic, which we call recipe, and it will be deployed to pollination. And from the user side, you basically interact with that recipe using our CAD tools or using the web interface. In this way, you are basically cutting out that need for this person to run the study for you. You will have access to that, and for the engineering consultant point of view, you don't need to be there all the time to serve your client, so you can basically scale up. Devang just shared a good blog post that we go through this graph and like how we resolve that, if you're interested to read more. So to resolve that, we built 4 different technologies that we're using. One is the CAD plugins. The other one is the recipes. Then we have cloud computing to run things faster. And we have the web interface, which is the hub for doing all this collaboration in QA, QC. There are posts and longer presentation for each CAD plugin. And about recipes, I'm not going to go over them now. But if you have questions, I will be happy to answer them later during this session. So the way everything comes together, and a reminder here is pollination is a hybrid solution. So it's not cloud-only solution. It's cloud first, but not cloud-only, as we call it. The CAD plugins are there on your desktop, so you can keep working in the environment that you're most comfortable with. And the connection between your design model and your analytical model will always be live. It's not like you have an analytical model and start working on an analytical model in a different platform. You keep working in your CAD environment and generate the analytical model. You use the recipes to run the logic, which you can run locally or on the cloud. Now with having this analytical model, HBJSON in the middle, for the first time, you can see your analytical model live before you run it. So that gives a lot of opportunities for QA, QC, and make sure your model is exported correctly before you run the study. You can do it from the web interface as And as I will show you, you can actually do it from all the CAD environment that we have right now. So you can run the simulation locally. You can run the simulation on cloud, which will scale up, of course, when you run it on cloud versus when you run it locally. But that's your choice. So how does it work? I added this slide because for new people, there are a lot of things you can do because it's an ecosystem. You have something for everyone. But generally speaking, if you want to think like how does it work in 4 simple steps is 1, you prepare your model. You can use our Pollination CAD plugins or your own. Just all you need is to generate that input file. Then you select a recipe, which can be an existing recipe to run, or you can develop a new one, or you can modify the ones that we have. And third, when you have your input and you have your recipe, you just run it. And again, you can run it locally or you can run it in Pollination. And once the run is done, you can visualize the result, and similarly on Pollination or locally using the CAD plugins, or if you're a developer, you can use our API and use another tool to do the visualization. With that, I'm going to go to product updates. These are the updates that we had between the last user meetup that we had last month and now. And all the recording of this user meetups are available on YouTube, so you can go and watch them if you want to know like the product updates from last month. So for the Rhino plugin, we have spent a lot of time making the room manager better. There has been a lot of bug fixes and improved performance. But one of the things, or 2 things that I want to mention so everyone knows, is one is the filter now that we have for filter by story or level, whatever you want to call it. This is mostly helpful for energy modelers who are very used to working level by level and go up and down. So this will allow you to do that quickly, so you can select all the level, whatever level you want to work on, check the model, and then go to the next level, or just see all of them at the same time. The other one is this refresh button that now you have in Room Manager. So for a larger model, and we're still trying to figure out why it exactly happens, but there are some, at some point, our Room Manager may lose like some of the data that's available in the Rhino model. And we are working on that, but like until we figure it out exactly for all the cases that happens, you have this button that can help you. So you can just refresh, and when you do refresh, it reloads everything from your scene. So you get like the clean model in your Room Manager. Then we developed a 3D to 2D to 3D workflow, if that makes sense. So the reason we developed this workflow is, and let me pause this first to talk about it. A lot of workflows that we see, even with the plugin for the Revit plugin, is what people do is they model their geometries as closed BRAP, and they put them in different layers based on program. Like you have office, hallway, stairs. Or you get, someone gives you the model like that. And this is very common. And the challenge that we have seen is these 3D models are not good, right? Like when they come in for large models, you usually have issues. And if you want to fix them in 3D, again, we're finding out like not everyone is comfortable editing in 3D. And honestly, like it's hard sometimes to edit things in 3D. So the workflow that we have developed to make this easier for everyone to do is there is a command that's called PO extract 2D plans. What it does, which is the one that I just run it will just take all these BRAPs and it extracts the curve. It creates a curve at the plan for each of them. So I just delete them. So now you see this is all the curves. So this is like what you can do in Rhino with doing an intersection. The difference here is it creates the curves in the same layer as the geometry when they came in. So you don't have to do this. You don't lose the relation between the layers of your poly surfaces when they came in and the curves that you create. The other good thing is the magic that happens here. When we create these curves, we actually save the data for the height of the BRAP. So now you can do your editing. I do something very simple, but you can fix the plan. And once you have it, there is another command that is called PO extrude 2D plans. And the difference here is, as you see when I ran it, because it knows the height of the initial geometry that came in, original geometry, it basically extrudes everything back to the same height. And the other thing that just happened, it extrudes everything in the same layer. So you don't have to do this painful thing of like selecting by layer, extruding, selecting next one by layer, extruding. again, like on large models, I have seen this saves like up to 30 minutes of time. Of course, you can do this with Grasshopper, but that's again, like you have to know Grasshopper and set it up there. This will make it easy for making this workflow. We're also working on another workflow on 2D to make it easier for people to deal with like this transition of like getting a 3D model, which is not clean, going back to 2D, fix the stuff, going back to 3D. And a lot of this comes from workflows that people report to us. So if you have one, please let us know and we'll be happy to consider that. Again, like our motto is like delivering your freedom and flexibility for real world complexity. So if there's anything real world that makes your workflows complex, we really like to hear about that and see how we can add that to our plugins. For Pollination Revit plugin, we've worked on adding features for better integrated QA/QC during the process. If you have been using the Revit plugin, right now, if you wanted to see your HV-JSON model, or you wanted to validate that, you had to export it, either go to Rhino or run it from command line. Right now, from now on, you don't need to do that. So if you select it, and everything happens in this export model tab. One is this preview extra that's added here. So if you select multiple rooms in your model and then select preview, it will open up a preview window and you see the model in 3D. It's the same preview technology that we use on our web app. So the better the web app viewer gets, this will get better. I will show a screenshot in a second. And then so the second one is validate button here. So now when you create your model, you can select all your rooms and try to validate it inside Revit. It gives you a report if your model is validated or not. And this will save you a lot of time from like going all the way and running the simulation to understand your model is not validated. So this is how the preview looks like. You can see this is HB-JSON preview. And as I said, it's a full-fledged viewer. What I did here, and like usually I do quickly, is just I turn off everything else to check if the aperture is exported correctly from the model. And this is the validate button. So make sure you select all the rooms, because otherwise you will get validation errors for adjacency. If you only select floor 1, for example, and you don't select level 2, and they have adjacency, you will get validation error for that. You can ignore it if you understand. But if you want to check the full model, then you select everything and you validate, and it will tell you if it's validated or not. That was all that I had to present for today. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Trevor so he can show us all the good stuff that he has been doing.
I'm Trevor. During the day, I fix airplanes for the Navy, and then on my free time, I've been using Ladybug tools and writing some code and doing some things and being involved with all this for a couple of years. I'm a certified Passive House consultant, and I've been lucky enough to be contracting with BR+A Consulting Engineers in Boston for the past year. And the model that I'm going to show, I made, it's intended to be used for, I think it's up to 5 different things now. There's using it as a workflow demonstration for them. We're doing a case study on some things, and it's overall kind of super cool. And I'm happy to be here and share all this. Being that I have that day job, to me, and a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is the stuff that I like about pollination to keep things efficient and quick and programmatic when possible, and to just keep things streamlined to be able to do a large research laboratory in my spare time. But this is a research laboratory at the University of Massachusetts Medical School.
Trevor, did you share your screen?
I am about to, thank you. There we go. Now, I didn't want to create 528 rooms individually. Fortunately, the third level duplicates, so that was able to be accomplished easily. One of the things that I really enjoy about the Rhino side pollination tools are some of the things that allow for the QA/QC. I mean, the validate model is awesome, as well as things like Sorry. Things like just hiding that room right now, that doesn't look right. That's not the right boundary condition, nor is that. So being able to go through the model and double and triple check all these things on a really large, to me, and complex model has been awesome, because right away, right now, we're seeing, okay, there's some adjacencies. We got to look into that and see what's going on. So using a naming convention, all of the rooms were named as they are supposed to be to accomplish the task. And then this is my favorite part, being able to pull the pollination model into Rhino. I parsed out the lab spaces and the not lab spaces, used the standards library to apply via the naming convention the applicable programs, and then made the lab type program that was required. Putting everything back in here, wrote another little thing, duplicated to parse out the rooms for the third story, duplicating them a number of times to get the rest of our stories, and carrying on with the naming convention, adding a level to the end of the display name, applying the baseline construction set and HVAC system into the model, and then being able to do that relatively quickly and then throw it up on the cloud to have that model running. That then, to me, enables taking that same model and then going and working on the proposed models HVAC system with Ironbug, which is super cool. And yeah, I don't think 30 minutes is a lot. That went faster than I thought. Sorry. You're just being able to quickly make a large model and having multiple different ways of applying all of the various entries, whereas you can sort with the name, select all of your named rooms, and then in here you can apply all of your loads and controls for those zones. Also having the ability to do so in Grasshopper, send it up to the cloud, rebake the additional rooms that have been made. I've used Design Builder, Open Studios by itself, Energy Plus via the IDEA EP launch and the NRLs. I forget what it's called. Their graphic user interface for drawing the buildings, and SketchUp, and just the level of extensibility, customization, and just things being open source, so you can plug into the SDK and automate things the way that you want to. With this tool set, to me, is the best way to go about using Energy Plus and Open Studios. And I think.
Can I ask a question about the model? Oh, actually, we can write this. Okay, maybe I do the same thing. I just type my question. Or someone has a question, like John Key can take over that. I'll just type my question like everyone else.
Okay, thanks, Mustafa. Trevor, did you want to finish that thought?
I think I'm good. I think
Okay,
I'm just going to
awesome.
continue to say random stuff.
So Brett has a question where he's asking, were you able to generate an automated report to showcase the results for your client? And so were you able to bring down the report from our web platform where you can download it as an HTML?
I did earlier with one of the cloud simulations I ran to do some validation on a couple things. That is super cool, being able to just download from the cloud. The cloud in general is one of my favorite parts, the Pollination.app, is because using like Design Builder or other kinds of Energy Plus. I've previously been making a bunch of virtual machines and all that to free up my bare metal to be able to run really large EMS heavy simulations. And it's all quite crunchy and not very streamlined, but Pollination's kind of super awesome because it takes care of all that for you.
Yeah, so are you able to share what that report looks like, or is that something that we're not, or just before we go on to the next question? Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. These numbers are not real numbers. Like I said, this was part of when I was doing some validation for getting into doing a case study. So all the numbers that you see are not real numbers for results, but the space type summary in
Yeah. So this was a feature that we just added actually last month, the ability to export this report. And Chris, maybe you can talk a little bit about it. It's coming straight from OpenStudio, is that correct?
It's essentially an open studio measure that NREL originally developed to produce these nice searchable reports for various objects. But yeah, but we're probably going to continue to make improvements to these.
Yeah, and one of the questions last month was that we want, like, there was a question on the ability to actually customize this and change the graphics. So just anticipating that change, it probably in the future, right?
Yeah, well, I should also
Yeah.
say, yeah, we do have other things in the works for like really customizable visualizations. But yeah, but I think we'll at least try and streamline these automated reports, which will hopefully address, a good fraction of the cases for when you just need to know, what your EUI is, and then the breakdown by rooms or zones.
Awesome, thanks. So we are getting a lot of questions, which is great. So then I'll switch to Mustafa's question. So how did you create the input model, Trevor? Is it imported from Revit or did you draw it all in Rhino?
I took a couple days to kind of figure out how I wanted to do this model. I ended up not using the Revit side tools for this just because it's Revit, and I was a little afraid of Revit itself kind of um, getting me a little off track timeline wise. But what I did do was import the zoning lines with Rhino inside to have that like 2D reference to trace over and just kind of use as a reference. So that we have the zoning lines, which were taken from Revit with Rhino inside, and then I used those as references for doing the geometry.
Awesome. So it's kind of related to, well, actually, maybe not. So we're switching a little bit. Once you actually built the model, like how long did it take for the simulation compared to the amount of time that you took to prepare the model?
It took me a great bit longer to actually put the model together than it takes for the simulation to run. I think the geometry for me always takes the longest, which thanks everybody who kind of helped out with that. But yeah, that's always the big thing for me is the creation of the clean analytical model. The geometry always takes a whole lot more time than running the simulation does.
Okay. Um, okay. Thank you. So as you were simulating and using this workflow, did you run into any geometry issues or errors? And how, or were you able to mostly avoid those by using the validate and check spaces and adjacency features? Is a question from Ed.
I had a couple things. There was some issue where the model would validate, but I would run it on. I would try to run it in open with the Open Studios on the Honeybee side, and then I was getting some geometry errors. But if I remember correctly, Chris fixed that basically, and then otherwise, the validation and all of the other geometry tools were working really awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there was just a tolerance issue that we've recently patched within the recipes and the OpenStudio component.
Okay. Yeah, and so like Chris had a question in the audience. He was actually wondering about your grasshopper definitions. It looks like you're using some custom Python code.
Mhm.
Are you able to elaborate a little bit about what that's doing and how it integrates with the pollination components?
Definitely. I'm not doing anything that is very pollination related in the grasshopper components. It's mostly just honeybee and Ladybug Tools SDK, but in this initial one, we're just getting two outputs that are sorting the rooms by the naming convention. Over here, this one, it's a bunch of if elif just to apply the programs by that naming convention as well. And then going over to here, just once again, just pretty simply just sorting out rooms in the third story to then plug into the honeybee move object to provide the duplication for the repeating stories. And then in here, just appending to the display names the story. And I think that was the last one so far. Yeah.
Awesome. Chris, I see you nodding your head there. Was there something you wanted to add and you're smiling too?
I guess I want to ask, has it been smooth to jump between the Python interface, Grasshopper, or Rhino? Is that kind of flexibility to take the model into these different types of interfaces? Is it? It seems like you're making use of all of them, which is wonderful to see.
My favorite thing Ed actually showed me how to do is to get the honeybee model in a Jupyter notebook and then do stuff to it from there. It's kind of my favorite.
Awesome. So speaking of all of the plugins, Mustafa had a question. What if, given that you didn't really use the Revit plugin as much, what would change your mind about using it? Like, is it something on the software side, or would you say it's just the modeling that you encounter in Revit?
I think that Revit's kind of scary. And I think this was just too big of a model, too complex of a model for me to have felt like doing at first with the Revit side tools. I definitely intend to do this model with the Revit side tools because this is kind of just going to be a project that's going to be used for myself and people I work with to test things out and kind of use as the baseline for this is about the scope and scale that is like normal day-to-day easy day stuff for BR plus A. Like they wouldn't blink at something like this, so we're definitely going to be doing that next, but I was a little daunted just by how complex the Revit model itself was.
That makes sense. I know as soon as you said you were exporting things to Jupyter Notebook, my initial instinct was, hey, can we see that? And Nick actually also shared, is that something that you are able to share? Or if not, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it would take me probably 10 minutes to find an
Okay,
example of that right now,
no worries.
but
Okay. Can you talk? Okay. All right, that's fine. We'll go to the next question, which was from Richa. She's asking if you geo-referenced the model.
in terms of the orientation of the building and the context buildings and all that, I went on to OpenStreetMaps, and there's a OSM to World or something, I think it's called, to where you can get some, at least the footprints and some general geometry of that. And then using the site plan, I kind of plopped everything down, got the orientation of north, south, east, west, and all that good stuff lined up, and then further detailed some of the like the heights of the buildings weren't right coming out of OpenStreetMaps. So just a little bit of editing to get the context kind of correct, if that answers the question.
Yeah, Richard, did that answer your question? You can unmute yourself. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi Trevor, hi
Hi.
Janki, hi Mustafa, and everyone. So yeah, I guess we'll use OpenStreetMap to georeference it, and then we can align and do the simulations, right?
Was that a question for?
Yeah, to just cross check. Like, is this how we are supposed to do?
That's just what I happen to do because I like to make really complex models with tons of context shading, way more complicated than it probably needs to be, because all of these additional faces are going to add runtime to the simulation. But that is a way that you can do it, if that makes sense.
So for me, what my usage gonna for pollination is that I want to use in urban planning, and so there it is very much required that we use georeferenced stuff, and specifically the map should be properly aligned and we can just see the before and after. So in that case, what do you guys suggest that we should use?
There's a couple of, depending upon what kind of GIS, if you're using GIS software, there's a couple Grasshopper plugins that allow for bringing GIS data in that I feel like would be pretty complementary to Dragonfly and also pollination and stuff. But that is, what do everybody
Yeah.
else think?
Yeah. Chris or Mustafa, do you have anything you want to add to help to that on how the GIS?
I think Chris can talk for Dragonfly
Yeah.
functionalities. We have support for GeoJSON to import, but I want just, and Chris will add that. I wanted to ask, can we add a new poll kind of like to know how many people think importing the context should be like part of the Rhino plugin? Do you want automated, because this is, I have seen people like make a big deal out of it, like having context being generated. And in the Grasshopper world, if you know how to do it, it's very straightforward. But again, like that's something that we feel, if it is something that you think will be integrated, will help you to do your workflows faster, is something that we can build in the Rhino plugin to use OpenStreetMap to generate the context, like extruded context like that for you. Maybe we should have a poll or something and see like what people think about that.
Yeah, I'm launching it now. So again, if you go to that corner icon, you can go to, it has like a triangle, a square, and a circle. The poll is launched there, so you can go ahead and answer on the audience what would be helpful if context is also imported. All right, awesome.
And I guess while everyone's answering that, I could also just say that, yeah, we do have Grasshopper components that will import your GeoJSON to a simulatable Dragonfly model, which can then be imported with the Rhino plugin. We even have a recipe on pollination that will take a GeoJSON as input, so that you can assign properties of what HVAC systems are a part of each building footprint, and use those to basically to create an energy model, or at least a kind of maybe bare bones energy model from the building type and HVAC system templates. So yeah, so we do have ways of really trying to integrate well with those GeoJSON data sets. But yeah, but this is a very good question to ask, Mustafa. I'm glad you brought it up.
Awesome. So it looks like we might be transitioning to questions about the pollination platform. But before we do that, does anyone have any more questions for Trevor? I mean, he's got a wealth of information in terms of having used all of the platform capabilities for this specific project that he's showing. Okay. Um, Thanks, Trevor, for sharing this project. I'm gonna save you from continuing to share your screen, but there's a question here that's more general to the pollination platform and is asking, so how do you manage local project standards in such simulations? For example, ventilation in some countries require building volume to be multiplicated. uh, multiplied or increased with a certain factor. So do you have to give the normal X node to do this mathematics, or does HB or Honeybee know the empirically, like the formulas that need to be applied?
I can take a start answering to this. So this, generally speaking, you are responsible for building your model, right? When you're using the tools. Is it possible to make those changes? Yes. So like for this particular question, what you're talking about is basically like setting up the room properties, which you can do from inside the Rhino plugin, Revit plugin, and also Ladybug Tools Grasshopper plugin. But if the question is like based on your location, we get that standards that implement it to your model automatically. No, we don't. We do not do that.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just clarify. There is a way to specify the air changes per hour as as a unit of volume in terms of your outdoor air ventilation requirement. So you can just specify that and not have to do the math of knowing this is your room volume, etc. And to specify a flow rate in a volume per second. But yeah, but what Mustafa said.
And you can also build custom program types. If it's something that you use over and over, it's not like you have to do it every single time on your model.
Awesome.
Okay.
Does anyone else on the call have any
Yeah,
questions?
we have two
Oh,
more coming in.
oh, there you go. Sorry, they beat me to it. Um, so Asis is asking, as we can access OpenStudio and HVAC interface through Honeybee Grasshopper plugin, can we have an option for the Rhino plugin as well, is what I'm assuming? And it would be great to edit HVAC systems directly through Rhino instead of through just Grasshopper.
Well, this is a product decision, I think, to when. Is it possible? Yes. Is it on our roadmap to do it now? The answer is no, because there are other ways to do it. At the moment, as you said, you can use Grasshopper to do it. But yes, longer it is on our roadmap to bring it. Just to give you an idea about like where we are going with the Rhino plugin. So Rhino plugin initially, when we started like the hardest problem, which was doing like building a proper energy model. But at the same time, now we are kind of like one of the efforts that we have started doing is to bringing some of the quick analysis that people love and more real time, like sunlight averages studies and radiation studies that runs locally. It's almost real time. We are adding that to the Rhino plugin. That's one thing that we're working on. The other effort that's going on the Rhino plugin side is to make sure the plugin is really robust and reliable. So we are testing really large models and like doing salvage SSE or doing crazy things that can crash the model and see like if we can get to a point that the model doesn't crash whatever you do, we basically catch all the things that can go wrong. So those are the main efforts that we have right now and we probably will do until the end of the year. But after that, we are open to have like new features like integrating HVAC, which is a really large, big effort. And we have to make sure like that's something that people want. Because one of the other things that we know is a lot of people use the Rhino plugin to get a clean, reliable model, and then they do HVAC inside other tools that they use, like Design Builder, ISVE, Open Studio. So that's why we're just like, because people have other ways to do it, we're holding off on that. But yes, definitely a great feature to have.
And maybe just to highlight just what some of those other ways are that are within the kind of still ecosystem. I mean, yes, you can always bring your model from the Rhino plugin into Grasshopper and build a very detailed Ironbug HVAC and apply that to the OSM. that's maybe one of the straightforward ways of getting down into the details of the HVAC equipment. You can also write an OpenStudio measure with the OpenStudio SDK. OpenStudio is a full SDK for HVAC modeling, so you can always add those into your pollination recipes, add those into the into your OpenStudio export process. So there are definitely ways of editing all the way down to the nitty-gritty set points and details of the HVAC if you need to. And then, yeah, and we will probably roll out, yeah, we'll only make it more accessible from there, but there are ways of doing it right now.
Yeah, and it's a really great segue to a question asked by Vasim. He's asking, he's new to pollination, and so his question is, how does pollination integrate with Design Builder and Energy Plus? And I think both Chris and Mustafa touched on that. Vasim, do you like, did that help answer that question for you, or would you like more clarification on that? You can unmute yourself if you're able to, or type it in there. Is he still on? Yep. Okay.
So for anyone thinking here, maybe like I can say, pollination by itself is not a simulation engine, right? As I say, it's an ecosystem. And here, if by pollination, Wasim means pollination cloud has recipes that can run Energy Plus, which is the same engine that Design Builder uses under the hood. There is no direct integration between Design Builder and Pollination Cloud. And by pollination, if you mean Pollination Rhino plugin, Pollination Rhino plugin exports geometry, your model as GBXML in IDF, and you can import both of them in Design Builder. And also, Pollination Rhino plugin directly, you can run stuff in Energy Plus, or you can export them as an IDF and then edit them in Energy Plus editor and run them with Energy Plus if you want. So that's how the integration and interoperability happens.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions during, we have about 10 more minutes. All right. Mustafa or Chris, do you guys have anything that you want to add to the front end of the presentation or anything? Oh,
Can I share my screen?
yeah, sure. There
Oh,
is
there
a
is another
question that came
question,
in from
actually.
Nelson. But yeah, go ahead and feel free to share your screen. And so Nelson's asking, to what extent would it be possible to question the results or like QA, QC?
Verify within reality, do you? So that's, again, like that's a question of, are you asking, so what we have done about pollination, and that's, yes, like, is it, can I ask for a clarification? Is it the question about any cat plugins or like pollination ecosystem in general? You're talking about Pollination Cloud. You're muted, Nelson.
Okay. So I was more talking about at a point where you're not such an expert like you are doing some stuff and you're not really sure if that's going kind of in the way. For instance, you can have can simplify things by saying or calling some attention for an excessive end user index or something like that. Would that be possible to verify if you're just did not went out of scale?
Right. Okay, now I understand. Like, a very good question. So this is basically question is like validation over geometry. Can we have something to validate also the metadata for user? That's where we are heading to. Like, we are not there yet. We have discussed this a lot about how we help people to kind of nudge them in the right direction, kind of like a design consultant. And we were talking about error versus warning even today. And yes, that there will be automated and there can be automated workflows like how we validate your model for geometry now, that you can validate your model for energy, for example, simulation inputs, and we can give you a report of like these things are off or they're like not what the normal inputs are. But we don't have it right now. But yes, totally, like that's a very good question and goes into our educate before automate mentality.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and share your screen, Mustafa,
I actually
think this would
tried.
be good.
I think it's just a stop.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to actually what I wanted to maybe you can share your screen and show like if people want to get started today, you go to Pollination Cloud. If you want to get involved, you go to pollination.community, and we already have more than 1,000 accounts on Pollination, and tens of thousands of simulation has been executed. So you are kind of like in good company. Uh, and if you need anything, any help from us to start, let us know. We'll be happy to help you to get it started. I know I haven't been great in getting back to my emails during the last 2 or 3 days because of the conferences that we were preparing for, but like I'm here to help from now on until the end of the week at least.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, this is the our pollination.cloud is the website, and I'll copy it into the chat box for anyone who doesn't have it and hasn't signed up for it. And then the community or the forum is discourse.pollination.cloud. I'll add that in there. And I see, Trevor, you shared an nrel.gov tool. Was that in response to one of the questions?
Oh yeah, the is within reality type thing. Redstock and Comstock are kind of. I mean, I've used them to kind of refer stuff before. I didn't know if that would be helpful.
Okay.
Not being a trained building services engineer, it's nice to have references for what things are kind of ballpark supposed to be.
Okay. So that's a really great resource for anyone who's looking for additional tools to get started with.
It may
stuff.
also be worth
Yep.
highlighting that the kind of library of programs and construction sets that we ship with the Pollination Rhino plugin and Ladybug tools, those come from standards as well, and they're meant to provide a good starting point, such that if you don't know what to apply in a certain case, like you can use those, and it's at least a reasonable assumption. That's and that parallels. I brought that up because Restock and Comstock. That's actually well, Comstock in particular is one of the sources that those programs are pulled from.
Awesome. Richa, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, so um, we are new, like I am new to pollination, and my question lies that if I have to do, like I have a website and I'm, projecting my model like live on the website, can I have the live simulation on my website? Something like that can we do using pollination or some other method?
So the short answer is yes, and that's how our Pollination app works. Basically, our platform works. We have a full API and SDK, so you can just, if you go to api.pollination.cloud, you'll see all the documentation. And if you go to GitHub, you will see all the SDKs that are available. So api.pollination.cloud. Yep, and there is an interactive one, which is the first one, and there is like a better looking one that you can
So
use.
that's
Yeah.
our API.
And this is exactly, so what you're
API
using here is what we are using internally. So if it works for us, it should work for you.
Okay.
This is great. This will
Yep.
be really much helpful to us, like for our projects.
Yeah. Great to know.
And lots of sites here in the chat box for reference for anyone who's new to it. Yeah.
Can we have the GitHub link as well?
Sure, I'll share it in a minute.
Yeah.
I think I
Thanks,
actually have
Mustafa.
it as part of user manual, but yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, so we do have a user manual. It's linked on our discourse as well for getting started under docs um, for the web application, the Revit plugin, Rhino plugin, and the Grasshopper plugin. So there's a bunch of resource, and this is a work in progress document. And so as we start adding features, we will be updating this to make sure that it's current. And Mustafa just shared the GitHub link with everyone on the chat. And when we post this, I'll make sure these links are in the YouTube notes for anyone who needs them. Okay. If there are no other questions, or are there any more questions? We have 5 more minutes.
Just a note for your construction. Your manual by now is looking a little bit like Lego instructions nowadays, which are terrible. You only know what you're going to do in the next page. It's horrible. It's like stupid. But you can really do just an entrance part saying, okay, in this way, the parts are going to be connected this way, this generic way. I can talk to you about it later on, but it's like I made a Lego like 2 years ago, and I got so terrible with that because you cannot, it doesn't leave space for you to go forward. But if you make a small introduction, say, okay, this part relates these topics in this way, and then you can jump things if you want. Okay, but that I know it's a startup, and I can help you with that if you want.
That's really great feedback, Nelson. Thank you. We're definitely going to take that into account and make sure that we give more open-ended, less step-by-step
Sure.
information.
You have my email, Nelson. Just let us know, and then like let's chat about this more and understand what exactly you're trying to do here. Because we don't we have format. Charlie asked another question: Is there a current guidance for Revit users whether use within Rhino inside Revit versus native Revit plugin? We literally had a call with McNeil team last week about this. We have. Right now, our assemblies, like for 2 plugins, actually make a conflict. So the Rhino plugin will not load inside. If you try it and it doesn't load, it's because of the different conflict. We are working on that, but you can already use it from inside Grasshopper if you want. That should work. There is no
inside
documentation.
Revit.
Right, inside Revit. The
inside
Grasshopper
plugin. Inside Revit.
Yes. So Pollination inside Rhino inside Revit, or Pollination inside Grasshopper inside Rhino inside Revit works. But Pollination inside Rhino inside Revit right now, you will get conflicts because the libraries are not the same.
What about Pollination for Revit?
Pollination for Revit for itself works, like if you want. But I think
is there guidance? I'm curious about like.
No, we don't, and that was the call because like we wanted to know how to access that, and based on the conversation, all the SDKs are available for us to add an extra node. So the way it will work, and if it is what you have in mind, because what we had in mind is now you will get a new node that gives you that clean model that we generate from the Revit plugin accessible inside Grasshopper. And you can take that and do the rest inside that. Is that what you had in mind too, or is it like something different?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
That's super cool, by the way.
Yeah, but we'll get it to work. It takes some time, but yeah, McNeil has been really supportive of making it happen, and we have just like to get it to work on our side now.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are getting to the close of our hour here, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next monthly call. Any questions, we're available on Discord, so you can email any of us. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yep, looking to hear more of your feedback, people. Like, don't be shy. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.